Jules, it's International Week again, but everything is overshadowed by international news. That England have a new manager and a wonderful headline in Bild in Germany. The motherland of football is getting a German dad.
Yeah, not so many good headlines in England, especially in one newspaper, calling it a sad day for English football or something like that for England.
It is. Okay, this is one of the 3 points I was going to make. And we've touched upon it. It is a bit sad.
Why?
So you have the most competitive. You are the co-inventor of the game, along with Scotland. You have the most competitive league in the world, the best league in the world.
Yeah.
You produce. You've gotten really good at producing footballers.
Yeah.
And yet you can't produce coaches. It is an indictment of the system.
I'm not sure if
it's been happening for 24 years.
Yeah, but then, maybe this is how they do it, and they don't do it well. Not like in Italy, or not like in Spain, for example, or even in Germany. Maybe there's a system issue. You're right, but I think also sometimes it's just the cycle, and just at this time there is just no really good, or certainly not as good as Thomas Tuchel. Because I think Eddie Howe is a really good coach, and Graham Potter is a really good coach as well. But they're certainly not at the level as Thomas Tuchel. So if you can get better that is non-English, why would you get an English manager that is not as good as the ones you could get who are not English? I don't understand. You want to win, right? Get the guy who's most likely to make you win.
Some people say it is a representative nation. We can get into this further. We can get into this further later on because there's a lot to get through. But it is a representation of the country. I think that's the short answer. That's why they get riled up about it. And there is an added element to England, Germany. That's how some people feel about it.
I think we can move on from England.
To me, what's interesting is, and why this is good, in addition to the fact that Tuchel, I think, is a very good coach, probably the best unemployed coach out there, with apologies to Zidane, but Zidane was never going to come and manage England, so let's leave that to one side, it's 18 months, clear target. He's there to win now. And I made the point in my column, which is up on the site for those who want to read it, is I think there's a feeling at the FA that there is a window of opportunity. And you want to win now before they close. Not because the players are getting old, because apart from Kyle Walker and Harry Kane, most of the others, they're all the right side of 30.
Yeah.
But because you have a certain momentum here, 2 Euro finals, World Cup semifinal, World Cup quarterfinal. So the time is here and now. I like that. Like, cut through the BS. None of this building for the future 20 years from now. Future is right now.
Yeah, that's what I said on Monday on the show when we talked about Tuchel and Conte, etc. This is it. It's a very different situation than other countries who change for a different style or for a rebuilding job or for an abrupt departure. This is very different. You've got that momentum, and he's a winner. That's why I've got no issue with the fact that he's not English. That's it. And I don't really understand, again, why some people have, but he's a winner. He's going to make them win.
I will explain that part to you on the Gab and Juls podcast. But the other element, which I think is interesting here, it's not so much the fact that one of the negatives, and I think it's an elephant in the room that you can't ignore. This guy right here is a guy who in his last 4 jobs, he was fired. He didn't leave to move to another club.
Yeah.
He was fired. And he was fired after falling out with the people above him.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely a talking point that we can get into. Good news is for England, there won't be anybody buying players that he doesn't want or not buying players he does want. Yeah. That is a positive. What I find interesting from Tuchel's perspective is he is backing himself. In some ways, for him to do better than Southgate, he has to win the World Cup, right? Maybe reach the World Cup final, lose, whatever. Say, that's better than reaching the Euro final, whatever, right? But he's got to, that it's the bar that Southgate has set.
Yeah.
That is a very high bar because there's a lot that can go wrong. He could have taken the more patient route. He could have sat there and look, the Manchester United job will become available at some point. It's not just that. There are other jobs. There are ways back in Germany, maybe more difficult. You've already been at Bayern, you've already been at Dortmund. But he's a name that would have come up at Real Madrid when there's going to be a change. Like, he's a guy who's in the mix. Here, he is putting his rep on the line a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think a job like this, at this time, with the squad that he will have with England, comes once in your career. Manchester United, Real Madrid, those big European clubs, someone like him who's 51 years old, they will come again. England, in this context, with this kind of winning mentality because of the 2 finals they played, the talent, this is now, and I'm not sure he will ever come back to him. So that's one of the reasons. And also, he's a winner. He knows he can turn things around. He did it before. And I think there's no reason why he could not do it. That's how he sees it. But then, like he said yesterday in his press conference on Wednesday, this is all the unknown for him because he's never been in an environment where you only train 10 days in July, 10 days in September, October, November, etc. So it's a different rhythm for him to adapt to as well.
Jules, you described him as a winner. And as you know, I am the original Tuchelista. And I also want to talk in a minute about how he has changed over the years because I think that is relevant to the conversation. Some people might say, okay, well, he's a winner. You say. I say. Obviously, with Mainz, you could argue finishing fifth, that is winning, and that was a tremendous. It was a long time ago. With Borussia Dortmund, he finished double digits behind. In 2 years, he finished double digits behind Bayern both seasons. And look, it's tough, right? But Xabi Alonso did it. He did win the German Cup, knockout competition. Paris Saint-Germain, he won everything. Reached the Champions League final, won everything domestically. Most Paris Saint-Germain managers tend to do that because it is Ligue 1. At Chelsea, you give him a pass perhaps after the Bowley madness and all the instability of that season with Abramovich leaving and the sanctions and whatever. He won the Champions League in empty stadiums in COVID circumstances, which is still a win, right?
Yeah.
And at Bayern, of course, he won the league after nearly losing it. And then the second year, he finished 18 points behind off the top of the table. I believe that is the worst showing for Bayern since like 1992 or something like that, right? So describing him as a serial winner, if we,
I think
it depends where you put the.
I think when you win the Champions League, when you win league titles, you're a winner. I think he's a great cup manager. Knockout competition manager, and for England and on international level.
Because of the 2 cups that he's won away from Paris Saint-Germain?
Because on the season that Chelsea won the Champions League, for example, he beat Simeone and Klopp and Guardiola and Mourinho and everybody in those, if you just look at those matches in isolation, individually, so not over the season, not over 38 games in the league, on those games, which you can mention them as cup games, for example, he beat everybody. Zidane twice, Guardiola twice. It was him taking over Chelsea and what he did with that team at the time after Lampard, all the way to winning the Champions League against Guardiola in that final. COVID or not COVID, was outstanding. And for me, that's why in a World Cup environment, in an international level, he's a winner and has got that winning mentality that can take England all the way.
I 100% agree with you, actually, on that point. That in a knockout context, he's phenomenal. I think tactically, he's as prepared as everybody. There is a legit, I think, concern, and he raised it himself, and we touched upon it. And I think it applies to every coach that goes from club management into national team management. You have less time to work. You know, you said he gets his players for 10 days. It's not 10 days of training, of course, because they have matches and they have travel. I would imagine they're going to have maybe any international break. You'll have 4 or 5 training sessions. I think I'm right in thinking that from the next cycle, but that might be after 2026 actually, that obviously you're going to have the longer international breaks with more games, but fewer breaks, obviously. That will be a huge adjustment for him. We don't know how that's going to work. I think he'll benefit from the fact that I think one of the age-old issues with England, and Southgate got around it a little bit because he was so likable, is that if at club level you're getting your instructions from Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp, and you go to the national team and you're getting them from Gareth Southgate, you might not listen as intently. But I think Tuchel has that gravitas.
Yeah.
So I think that's a positive. What I find interesting, going back to this cup thing, and his pragmatism, is I went back, again, it's linked to it in my column, but there's this famous video where he gives like a TED talk and he's sitting there, and it's a much younger, it's when he was at Mainz, right? And he's sitting there and he's in a black t-shirt, and people watch this and they're like, oh my God, it's called The Rule Breaker, right? And he's so wise, he's so smart. And you go back and you watch it now, and it seems a little hokey, right? He talks about his relationship with players. He says, oh, every time I meet somebody, we have a rule at this club. We shake each other's hands and we look each other in the eye, and we feel good about working together. And then he talks about how he wants to enter the flow, because when you enter the flow, that's when you become the rule breaker. And I'm thinking to myself, this is kind of gobbledygook.
And this is 15 years ago, though.
Exactly. But this is what I'm talking about, the evolution. Right? And he talks about, he did two things back then with Mainz that he talks about quite openly, right? Which I cannot imagine he would do now. One is, one season, every single game, and people noticed that he kept changing his lineup. Every single game, he kept things very simple he would just mirror whatever the opposition's formation was. And he would play like the opposition so that he turned everything into a series of one-on-ones. And I'm like, okay, that's not, that is the kind of message you send when you're weaker than the opposition. It was probably the right thing to do for Mainz. That's not something you're going to carry with you. And the other thing which he did, which I absolutely loved, is he didn't want his players to play the ball down the line and put in a cross. He wanted his players to hit diagonals. So what did he do? He redesigned the training pitches so that they would be diamonds. So that if you tried to hit it down the line, it would go out of play for a throw-in when they scrimmaged. Other times when he wanted them to play narrow, he redesigned the pitches to make them super long and super narrow. Other times when he wanted to play with width, the pitches would be short and very wide. This stuff seems hokey now. I'm sure it's not what he does now.
Yeah.
I would argue now he's developed into a far more pragmatic manager. We saw that. For me, I saw that at Paris Saint-Germain the most. I'd say that's where the transition came, right? Where the club still scored a gajillion goals, I think more than 100 goals and whatever. But you could see, especially the year that they went to European final, there was a solidity to the team, defensively especially, that wasn't there before. Under Unai.
Sure.
And that was under Unai Emery, by the way. Not a bad coach, his predecessor.
Yeah, so, I mean, he kept the 4-3-3 all along, so there was not many changes tactically. But certainly defensively, they were outstanding. I think the back three still would have his preference. I think that's the system that he's played the most through his whole career. So again, it's difficult to compare the Mainz time, the Dortmund time, the PSG time, the Chelsea time, etc., the Bayern time. But I think deep inside, that's probably why he would like. He likes 2 10s behind a lone striker, for example, which again we saw at Chelsea with the wing backs, whether they're very attacking wing backs, whether they're slightly more cautious wing backs. I think he can adapt to that. But I also think that if he looks at a squad and thinks, you know what, this is a squad for a 4-3-3, he would play. If it's a squad for 4-2-3-1, because you've got Musiala in your team that you can play as a 10, then you do that. So I think he's really capable of changing things very easily and at international level, I think this is very important as well. But I'm really, really excited to see what he does. And I know we will have to wait a long time because he won't be involved in November, which is something also a bit weird. So his contract starts on January the 1st, 2025. So he's been announced as the England permanent manager, but they still have the interim guy who's going to take the next 2 games in November. And Tuchel will only start in March, really, the next his first games.
My understanding of that is that there's a financial piece to it in terms of the deal that they have with Lee Carsley.
Yeah, of course, but they're not going to change that. It's still a bit strange.
On that financial piece, it was written in there's a newsletter called FootBiz, which is very good, and they explained that basically the FA's budget is £20 million, for the 2-year cycle, or maybe it's a 4-year cycle, whatever it is, right? But 2-year cycle, I think. So he's going to be earning about £7.5 million in those 18 months. We think, right? Making just over $5 million a year.
Yeah.
Had they gone for Eddie Howe, they would have had to pay compensation. Howe might have made a little bit less money, or maybe the same as Tuchel, I don't know. But you also would have had to pay compensation to Newcastle.
Yeah.
So then and that would have been probably a minimum of $5 million, right? So that would have eaten up more into your budget.
Yeah.
So in some ways, they're giving themselves more flexibility here. And I think it seems mad to think that we're in a situation where money comes into it and where Tuchel could be cheaper than, with all due respect, Eddie Howe. But I think that is part of the reality of this situation. We don't know. People are already speculating, and it's going to be fascinating. I agree with you that he's going to be pragmatic. He's not going to look at this and say, like, oh, look, Bellingham is now a number 10, Foden's a number 10, Cole Palmer's a number 10, let me play 3 number 10s, right? He's not going to think like that.
No.
He won't have the opportunity to adapt players into different roles because they won't have as much time to work together, which he might do on a club team.
Yeah.
Do we think if he does go 3 at the back, obviously he has a natural wing back on the right potentially in Trent?
Yeah.
Does he have one on the left?
I mean, he
Are we going back to
potentially-
Bukayo Saka?
No. But I don't know if Luke Shaw, by the time
Yeah.
March comes over, he might finally be fit.
Is
And
Eric
then-
Dyer uncorking champagne? That somebody who
well,
really likes him is
I
back?
think it was more that last season at some point he needed someone
Yeah,
like
no,
him.
I'm joking.
He's not going to be mad, but it'd be interesting to see what he does. Like every new head coach in international level, who you call. We saw with Carsley that I thought outside of the box a little bit with Angel Gomez, or even Madueke. Madueke was in good form for Chelsea, so it made a bit more sense maybe. But so maybe Tuchel has a few ideas already. And again, between now and March, you would have had the time to watch a lot of games from England, previous games, from players who could be involved abroad in England. I expect to see him a lot at stadium watching potential England international who he would want to work with. And in a way, more than if he'd come in now for November, there's still time. There would be a month between this international break and the next one. But now, between now and March, there's even more time for him to almost settling in the job and see exactly what he wants to do. He can go and speak to players. He can talk to coaches of English clubs, everybody, really. And that's probably a good thing for him to be able to prepare so well for when March comes.
In terms of, obviously, I mentioned this before. This is somebody who's been fired from his last 4 jobs. And in 3 of those 4 situations, it was in mid-season. Although, obviously, with Bayern, he ended up sticking around.
Yeah.
I thought he was truly terrible at Bayern, like really, really bad. And you can say, well, Bayern, toxic environment, everybody except for Pep Guardiola and Jupp Heynckes feels like.
And even Pep felt that he didn't really succeed like he would have wanted.
Yeah, but at least he wasn't sacked.
Yeah, true. You're right.
But in the other situations, I think at Chelsea, I think he was doing a good job. I think he suffered personally and emotionally off the pitch a lot, and I think that really affected him. I would hope that there's reasons for that in his personal life, and as well as all the turmoil in the team. I would hope they looked into it.
Yeah.
Paris Saint-Germain. So the stock explanation is that Paris Saint-Germain, he fell out with Leo.
Yeah.
Over signings.
Over everything.
But what was Leo getting involved in his team selection or
Yeah,
well,
they just didn't agree on the direction for the team, the way the team should be playing, the leadership.
what did Leo not like about the way Tuchel was playing when he reached the Champions League final the year before and won the league, of course?
Yeah, I think, and Tuchel also is a very strong-minded individual that always says what he thinks. Very, very.
And Leo is a nice guy and very handsome as well.
But Tuchel would say, like, not rude, not in a rude way, but he would have a stronger argument and he's very, very bold in what he says all the time and very stubborn. So they were always going to clash at some point anyway. But on terms of style of football, that defensive solidity that you mentioned, which was very true, that I think there was a will maybe from the club to have a bit more of an attractive style of football.
Flair, yeah.
Especially when you've got players like Neymar and Cavani and Kylian and Verratti and all those kind of guys. So I think that was a point of disagreement between them. But I think Tuchel is probably the only manager to have been sacked after a 4-0 win at home in the league. I don't remember, certainly in big clubs, somebody being sacked after winning 4-0 at home.
It was
just
Christmas
before
too, right?
Yeah,
It was his
before
Christmas
Happy
present.
Christmas, Thomas. But because what is also interesting here, like you said, Gabby, before, the United job would come available at some point and he would be one of the contenders, right?
Not if he's the England manager at the time.
There's not
That,
now,
but I'm
before.
saying that this goes back to my other point.
No, but-
he's really backing himself.
No, but it's more than that. Is that the fact that he clearly chose England ahead of another club like a United or like somebody, because that offer would have come at some point for him.
That's to his credit.
Yeah, it is. But it could also be because this kind of toxic relationship that he's had everywhere, really. Everywhere. Not just in the clubs where he was sacked, but everywhere. maybe he's had enough of having somebody above him that he sees every day at the training ground, a sporting director, a CEO, a director of football, an owner, whatever you want to call it, who comes and doesn't have to interfere, but he's always there, always in the corner of his eyes, always behind him, always. And now there won't be any of that, because it's not the FA that are going to come up at St. George's Park every day of that international break, say, hey, TT, what are you doing today? What's the plan? What about him? And what about that? And none. He will have that kind of freedom and almost peace of mind. And maybe that's what he wanted after all those issues with Leonardo and Uli Hoeneß and Todd Burley and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it's funny because in my mind, I drew an analogy. The only other person I remember in recent years to do something like this was Antonio Conte, when after being so successful at Juventus and falling out with, in his case, it was mostly players.
Yeah.
He's let go. He can pretty much write his own ticket at that time. But what does he do? He decides to take the Italy job instead and takes over, unlike Tuchel takes over a very good England team, that Italy side that we would see at Euro 2016, for my money, the least talented Italy side in half a century, maybe more. And he did well with them.
Yeah.
But you are backing yourself because it's very easy to fall off the carousel. Just go ask Max Allegri about that. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are, I mean, Graham Potter's still looking for a job, lest we forget. So I think that is a credit to him. I want to end this. Look, we're both, in some ways, we're both like Tuchel, right? We're foreigners working in England. We've worked for English media. We still work at times for you certainly do more than me, but for English media. I think it's slightly different in football. I think grown-up countries in football, of the grown-up countries, of the historical powers, nobody has had, except maybe like in the dawn of time when only English people knew how to play football, nobody has had a foreign coach. Certainly not in the last 50, 60 years. There's some co-productions, Elenio Herrera a little bit with Spain, whatever, but it did jointly with somebody else in like 1960. It's seen as a blow to your pride. Out of the nations winning the World Cup, Uruguay, of course, has a foreign coach now, and they've had others before. But Uruguay is a teeny tiny country, right? Yeah. It is a blow to your pride. Now, England have already popped their cherry because they did it with Ericsson. I think the difference is Ericsson was seen as a sure thing, and Capello was seen as a sure thing. More sure things than Tuchel, right? When they took over, because
what's sure things? What does that like?
Well, I think they were almost a guaranteed success on paper, or a more guaranteed success.
Sven-Goran Eriksson was a guaranteed success
at that time.
Really?
Maybe you were. I don't know if you were here around the time, but the thinking about England is, we have world class this, we have world class that, and the only thing that's missing is the psychology of a winner. Eriksson, of course, been super successful, variety of different clubs. He's calm. The players respect him. He's got a winning mentality. He won the title at Lazio, whatever, right? Capello comes in. Capello, of course,
Capello more than Eriksson. Okay, but Eriksson, I know he won it with Lazio with an amazing team and an amazing squad.
But I think Tuchel doesn't come in. Tuchel is close to that, or it's the same thinking, that the gap between Tuchel and, with all due respect, Eddie Howe and Graham Potter. I actually heard that the third candidate was your friend Steve Cooper, and I was kind of shocked. Okay, yeah. Like, no, seriously, that would have been option number 3 after Howe and Potter. And I'm like, wow, really? These are the options at the top of the England game. But it strikes me that you're choosing somebody, and you're choosing a German too, and that matters because, listen, we joke about this, right? Germany are the gold standard in Europe. Every big European country, you ask them like, ooh, Holland, Dutch guys, who are your big rivals? Oh, Germany. In Italy, we think Germany are big rivals. I think we have 4 stars. They have 4 stars, so there's a reason for that. Holland with their no stars, whatever. England with their one little teeny tiny star, which he said he wants to double to take it to 2 stars. They see Germany as their rivals, and there's political and social reasons for that. Bringing in a German, you could understand how psychologically. You can't just tell me, oh, no, I don't understand why.
No, I do. I think I wonder if it's maybe time to move on from Germany, England, Second World War, blah, 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 etc. That's what I'm saying. Or the way I see it, I hear all your arguments. I can hear other arguments. I'm all for meritocracy in football or in everything.
Even with the national team.
Even with the national
So
team.
you don't think-
So,
so you-
yesterday on French radio, one of the guys said, I would never want a non-French coach for the national team. I said, oh, okay, no problem. So if Guardiola comes or Jurgen Klopp comes and wants to take over France, you said no. He goes, oh, yeah, no, not them. That's different. So what's the difference then? So I guaranteed you, had Pep Guardiola taken this job, none of Gary Neville, Harry Redknapp, all these English people would have complained about, oh, I wanted an English guy. They would have said, oh, Pep, thank you so much. We have Pep Guardiola. Our national team is going to do. So, okay, he's not Guardiola. I give you that. But he's pretty good. Certainly better. Again, if you had a better English coach that had been snubbed or overlooked by the FA, I would have been, okay, I understand. But don't give me there's good English coaches. Why didn't we go for one instead of Thomas Tuchel?
No, I don't think you use the argument there's good English coaches. I just, for me personally, obviously I'm Italian. If I were in charge of the Italian FA, I would not appoint a foreign coach. Even if he's much better, even if we have the Muppet Show and
So you would say no to Guardiola?
Yeah, I would say no to Guardiola. But I mean that is, I don't fault somebody else for doing it, because I think the national team should simply be an expression of your football. If you are a mature footballing
So Portugal
country,
are not a mature country. With the greatest player, one of the two greatest players of all time, they're not mature.
For my money,
So Roberto Martinez.
I love Roberto Martinez. I really like him.
Yeah.
Given the absolute amounts of talent that there are there's so many great Portuguese coaches out there.
Yeah, which is another reason.
They chose that. I'm saying I wouldn't choose that.
Because
but that's fine. There's some things you like. I don't like.
No, but the argument is like, oh, England, at least they have nobody, so they had to go somewhere else. Portugal have an amazing school of forming coaches.
I would make the same. I would make the same. I think your national team should be an expression of your football and your FA. It's not just about winning with national teams, right? Especially if you're mature. You can, again, I can understand it more if it's the US, if it's Saudi Arabia, if it's these countries which are less mature, whatever. And maybe if I were Saudi or American, I would want a foreign coach, but I'm not. I'm saying, it's a failure, and I don't think it's worth a failure to go and chase a World Cup with a foreign coach. In Italy, we've had foreign coaches.
Disagree so much.
In volleyball, which is a big sport for us, who won Olympic gold and stuff, Julio Velasco, whatever. Well, you've had that success, but I think the national team should be something that really unites people, and there are people out there, and forget the punditocracy, who passionately feel that this is the wrong decision. This should go with a national coach. And
if people don't want to win, they don't want to win. I mean, there's nothing I can do for them. If they would rather Lee Carsley and being knocked out in the last 16 of the World Cup, no, I've got no issue with it. I just think that if you can get a top manager, unfortunately, who's not English for you, and you're still against it, I really don't get it. And I understand what you're saying. I think if you speak the language, for me, the language is the buyer. So England appoint a foreign coach who doesn't speak English, for example, I don't know why, but for example, then I would have an issue with Capello. I had more of an issue than Tuchel, for example, who coached in England, who speaks English, who clearly can identify himself to the Premier League or the English game, etc., even as a German. The language will be the only buyer where I think, okay, you can't appoint a guy who doesn't speak French for the French.
Who's sitting did okay with South Korea in 2002. I'm pretty sure he didn't speak Korean.
True, but you've just insulted South Korea by saying they're not mature countries. So, but yeah, I mean, certainly it's going to be a proper ride. And wait until he doesn't sing the anthem, by the way, for his first game.
Okay.
And then that controversy is going to explode.
I will make this very, very clear.
Yeah, but you will, but you know exactly what the reaction will be.
Yeah, there's two things. One is, I hope that the criticism towards Tuchel, you can criticize him because he looks a little bit like an insect. You can criticize him because he's losing his hair. Criticize him if his football's terrible, or if he says stupid things, or if he does the weird handshake thing with Conte or whatever, right? You cannot, I hope we don't get jingoism coming into this about him being German.
But you know he will. The question was asked yesterday already. He's not going to get...
No. I'm talking about below the belt stuff, not the concept of appointing a foreign coach.
No. About the anthem.
And on the anthem, okay, first of all, whoever asked that question, let me just tell you right now, Dumbero, you're a Muppet. Grow up, okay?
But
the anthem is not a reputation. The national anthem is not a reputation. Is not a representation of your football association. There's nothing to do with it. It's a representation of the country. It should be a representation of the country you belong to. Now, if you want to sing another nation's anthem, go ahead. Knock yourself out. But to ask somebody to do that, I think is just absolutely appalling and weird. And to use that as some kind of gold standard, that's absolutely ridiculous.
But it was a controversy with Lee Carsley. It's going to be a controversy with Thomas Tuchel comes March. This is going to happen.
I hope. I think he said he hasn't decided yet.
But we know he's not going to sing it. Come on. It would be probably even worse if he was to sing the King.
I remember years ago when Italy won a World Cup with Mauro Camoranesi, right? Who is the dude's from Argentina, right? He's of Italian descent, but hey, he played for Italy, whatever. And he didn't sing the anthem initially. I think later he might have. And I'm like, this is so stupid. You represent the football of a nation. You represent the FA of a nation. The anthem is not the anthem of the FA. No. It's the anthem of the country. I don't see how you would ever ask somebody to do that. And if you do that, you really are a sad person inside. All right, enough England. How about some quick hits instead?
Let's go, Gab.
Kylian Mbappe took to social media to describe reports linking him to an alleged rape in Stockholm as, quote, fake news, and his lawyers described them as, quote, totally false. Jules?
Yeah, this is an incredible story. Still developing. Gabi, again, the front page of L'Équipe newspaper, Le Parisien newspaper today in France. So Swedish prosecutors. So he was in Stockholm. We know that for 2 nights. He had 4 days off from Real Madrid during the international break where he didn't go with France. That created controversy in itself. He went to Stockholm with Nordi Mukiele, his former PSG teammate, now Bayer Leverkusen. His bodyguard and his PA. They had a couple of parties, etc. And now Swedish prosecutors are saying that they're probing an alleged rape in the hotel where Kylian Mbappe and his friends stayed. So the Bank Hotel, if you've been to Stockholm, you might know it. There, he's linked. They haven't mentioned the name of the suspect, so we don't know who the person is. Certainly, they haven't come out, the prosecutors, with Kylian Mbappe's name. Newspapers and media over there, including the Swedish tabloids, have named him, saying that according to their sources, it's him. But his team, Kylian, his lawyers, nobody has been told that he was the suspect in this case. So this is where we are now.
Yeah, and I think we need to let the courts and the prosecutors and the police do their job and go forward with this. I think at this stage, that's pretty much all you can say.
Yeah, absolutely. And meanwhile, Gab, sticking with Kylian Mbappe, a ruling is expected next week regarding the 55 million euros that Kylian says PSG owe him after what happened last season in terms of salary and bonuses, and they haven't paid. And on social media, Kylian seems to link the two.
Yeah, the rape allegation and this. He quoted, I quote here, "It's becoming so predictable on the eve of the hearing, as if by chance." All right, I'm going to check this back to you about whether you think the all-seeing eye of Paris Saint-Germain is so powerful that they could architect some kind of story like this in Sweden, no less. But I also want to say, if you're Real Madrid, if you're Carlo Ancelotti, you have a Clasico coming up in 2 weeks?
10
you need
days,
this 10 days. Yeah. You need this like you need a hole in the head.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, conspiracy?
I don't know. I don't know what that would do for this hearing. It's just about they owe me that money. No, we don't. We had an agreement that we would not pay you that. What he does in his private life would not have any impact.
I don't think it's clever of him to link the two, because all it does is it reminds people that, hey, look, you're making a lot of headlines off the pitch.
Yeah, that's true.
On the pitch, Randa Colomwani came up big as France beat Belgium 2-1 away. Jules, there was a lot of VAR in this game and a missed Youre Tielemans penalty as well.
Yeah, a big miss as well. He missed the target completely.
Nearly missed the second tier of the stadium.
Absolutely.
As well.
The first half was so good from Belgium, and Tedesco under massive pressure before the game, and even more now after the defeat. But
another foreign manager for you.
True.
A guy who's actually Italian, but his last name literally means German, and he's coaching Belgium. What are you going to do?
Struggling to adapt to the different rhythm, as we were mentioning. But the first half, Belgium wiped the floor with France. Really, I don't know how we scored first to make it 1-0. On a penalty that was a penalty, but a bit lucky.
We're fast crawling around. Oh, no, it was Tete crawling around on the ground.
Yeah. And then in the second half, Colomwani, who's the guy, just can't do anything right at club level with PSG. in, albeit a very different system and style of football. I understand that. Scoring a second goal, a bit of a mistake by Castille's in goal, but still great win for France. Even if they didn't really deserve it, I think Deschamps right now will take it.
Still on track for the Final Four. That game against Italy looms big, no?
Quarterfinals first, and
that's right.
Quarterfinals now. So top two are going to the quarterfinals, which takes a little bit away from that kind of suspense of finishing top of the group. And meanwhile, Gab, you mentioned Italy. They rolled to a 4-1 win over Israel, and they looked very good. I agree with you. Are you regretting your views on Spalletti after the Euros? And what you said about him then?
All the mean things I said about him? No, because when facts change, opinions change. Italy were terrible at the Euros. He made stupid choices. He made wrong choices. He's managed to imbue them with a sense of attacking purpose, with a sense of joy. I thought they were very lucky, by the way, with the penalty for the opener. But they played really well. They're playing front foot forward, whether it's Fagioli in there, whether it's Ricci in there. They actually have a guy who can pass in the middle of the park, which is nice. And Di Marco still playing out of his skin. Di Lorenzo scoring 2 goals. It's all good. Roll on.
You're in the quarterfinals already.
Even Retegui looks good.
Yeah.
Jules, we're not done because we got more quick hits.
Yes.
Spain destroys Serbia 3-0. Jules, the European champions, dominated this one.
Yeah.
And Arsenal fans will feel good about Mikel Merino making his first start since the Euros.
Yeah, he came on in the previous game against the Danes. He came on for Arsenal as well in the Champions League against PSG, for example. But first start, and he looked good. It was it might be a little bit insulting to call it a B Spain team, but it was a little bit of a
thanks you.
Great free kick, by the way, like he did in the Olympics final, unfortunately for us. But yeah, it was good because even without Lamine Yamal, for example, even when you have not French players, but players who are usually subs, even like a Merino, they still play so good. Their style is so good. The weather was terrible again. The rain, the pitch was heavy, and yet they still played. And Serbia was never good.
Serbia not good. They went down to 10 men. But also, what struck me was I think Spain are showing that this is a really versatile team. These are not pretty football conditions. They played narrower.
Yeah.
The pitch wasn't great, and they gutted it out.
Yeah. Argentina demolished Bolivia 6-0, and Gab, Lionel Messi had a pretty good game.
I'd say so. He just had a hat trick and 2 assists. He had a free kick. The one of his goals is that trademark that we have seen 2 million times, where he gets the ball from the right. You know what's coming. He's coming across the middle. He's coming just outside the box, right? And he still gets a shot off and scores. You know what's coming every single time. It's like the old Garrincha move. I don't know. I have no idea how he does it. He kindly said that Lautaro deserves the Ballon d'Or.
Please
don't
behave.
make a face.
Leo, please behave.
I might suddenly start caring about the Ballon d'Or if Lautaro wins it. He's up to. Here's an interesting question, just to stoke up the crazies. He has 112 goals. He's a couple of years younger than Cristiano.
Yeah.
He's 21 away from Cristiano. He's 78 away from Christine Sinclair.
Yeah, so that's not going to happen.
Okay, again, you've decided Messi can't beat Christine Sinclair either.
Definitely not.
Can Messi finish with more goals than Cristiano? That is one to watch.
So 21, but then I don't know if Messi would play for as long as Cristiano.
You assume
no. Already you see some of the injuries.
Yes.
Creeping out a bit more often, but...
And he won't get to play Bolivia all the time.
But now they've got
the greatest respect.
So that was his 10th hat-trick for Argentina in his career. Cristiano has 10 for Portugal as well. So even that race of who with the most international hat-tricks between the two is still going on. So pretty amazing.
Jamie Leveling scores the only goal on his debut as Germany beat Holland 1-0. Jules, Baumann, Stiller, Kleindienst, Leveling... And yet the Dutch managed just one shot on target, 3 overall.
They were a class apart. It was a really good game to watch because even, again, with a B Germany team, they just wiped the floor with the Dutch.
Leveling pick on the Dutch guy?
Well, he's always been, really. But Leveling, not supposed to be in the squad initially, but replaced Musiala, who was injured. Not supposed to start this game initially, but replaced Undav, who got injured too. And then on his debut, first ever game, to score... Great. I mean, he's doing great at Stuttgart. He's 23 years old. Him and Stiller are very much, in a way, potential future of this team too. And I think it's good from Nagelsmann to try them. Sorry, I thought you were going to come with something. Brazil also demolished like Argentina. Peru 4-0, Gab. We are tough on the rival. We've been tough, but to be fair, I think he deserved it. But 2 wins in his break now. So are we changing our mind a little bit?
Not really. I mean, the first 2 goals were penalties from Rafinha, one towards the end of the first half, one bit later on. Luis Enrique came off the bench and scored the 4th. Also, Andres Pereira. I'm glad he's getting some love. I think Andres Pereira has been one of the more overrated players for a long time. And I can tell you, Manchester United could do well with him back.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not a sparkling performance. I think right now you needed the 3 points. Obviously, some players out. I'm intrigued by Igor Jesus. I'm intrigued if this continues. And honestly, I like the fact that Dorival says, look, I need that kind of striker. I would rather go with this guy than shoehorn Rodrigo in there or another one of these little guys running around.
Absolutely.
Mexico beat a USA side without Pulisic, McKennie, and Flo Balogun. Jules, mitigating circumstances.
Yeah.
Were you expecting a little more from Portugal? Love affair didn't last long because they were terrible.
Yeah, they were not good. I mean, the first goal is a free kick from Raul Jimenez, but even Mexico were the better team, certainly, in this game overall. And maybe this game came a little bit too early for him. But we said against Panama, it's good to start with a win, and we saw some good things from his team. But we needed a better opponent to see, a bit more time for him to get everything across that he wants to. So, hey, that's part of the learning process for now. So Alex Ferguson will no longer serve as an ambassador for Manchester United, Gabby, come the end of the season. So at the end of the season, this is him over, and a lot of people are really upset. I don't know you, and you will tell us why, but a lot of people are.
Yeah, I just got this quote from Eric Cantona. It says, Sir Alex Ferguson should be able to do anything he wants at the club until the day he dies. Such a lack of respect. Totally scandalous. Sir Alex Ferguson will be my boss forever, and I throw them all in a big bag of poo. I don't know if he carries around large bags of feces with him to put people in, or if it's a French expression, put people in a...
Well, I don't think so.
Or Cantona expression. Guys, Sir Alex Ferguson is 82 years old. He's a widower. He was making £2.16 million to be a club ambassador. Okay, they're cutting jobs. They're cutting real people with real jobs. Sir Alex Ferguson does not need another £2.16 million. Sir Alex Ferguson will be an ambassador for Manchester United, whether he gets paid for it or not, whether he has a title next to his name or not. He's still on the board as a consultant. That hasn't changed. I don't see, especially these lefty types like Cantona.
Patrice Evra also was not happy.
Another one. Guys, people have lost their jobs and their livelihood. People with mortgages because the club are making cuts, right? How can you justify paying somebody £2.16 million?
Maybe the communication was wrong then. Maybe they could have just announced in a different way.
They said mutual consent. But they could have said, hey, Sir Alex, why don't you make a video saying, I'm stepping down to spend more time with my grandkids or whatever.
But he just as an ambassador. But in a free, they don't pay him anymore. But
okay, you know a little bit from the inside about football clubs. Is there anybody who's making £2.16 million
as an ambassador?
As an ambassador for the club?
No.
But
there's nobody. Sir Alex, though. So
what?
He's Sir Alex Ferguson.
That's
he's the greatest British manager ever.
That's fine.
That club is him, and he's that club.
And he was worth it to the club when he was managing them, and he was handsomely paid for it. Nobody's going to take this away.
Yeah.
I just think this reaction is so pathetic from these people. Jules, you caught up with Paul Pogba this week. Tell us about it.
Oh, yeah. Yesterday, producer Freddie and I went to Paris to interview him. I hadn't seen him for a while, to be fair, so it was good to see him. And we had
Is he still substantially taller than you? He hasn't shrunk.
No, we had a massive hug. And I think even producer Freddie was a bit like, wow, yeah, he's much taller than you, but he was still there was so much love. And just to see him happy and smiling was important. I think.
Let's remind people he served his ban and he's totally clear now.
So from January, he will be able to train again and go to a training ground again. And from March, he will be able to play competitive matches again. So,
this is in part because the court accepted his version of events where he says that he took the substance unwittingly. So he's still responsible. But this is why you do not get a 4-year ban. He got 18 months instead.
Yeah, exactly. And he said there were times where he didn't feel like a footballer anymore. And now again he can have that, and even just having an interview with us for ESPN just make him feel like a player again. And I think he was very happy. So I can't wait for him, whether it's at Juventus or not. I just can't wait to see him back on the pitch.
He looked like a little kid. I mean, I saw the interview he did with you, the interviews we did with others. I genuinely like the guy, and he seems so happy.
He's great. Paul Pogba also said, Gab, that he's ready to cut his wages and return to Juventus, but that he hasn't heard anything from them, so he doesn't know what they want to do with him. Do you think that would be a good idea?
I mean, he's there. He's settled. He has a place there. I think he would have to cut his wages substantially, right? Juventus have a clear project going forward, but he's not that old, right? He still has a couple good seasons left. I think you have to chuck this over to Thiago Motta, and you have to say, Paul, and you say you cut your wages, how much? Because we're operating on a shoestring now after all the bazillions that the club have burned through when they signed a certain guy and made certain decisions a while back. We cannot break that at all. So if he wants a place to train, maybe play a few games for 6 months, see where we are at the end of the season, bit of shop window, that could be a solution. If he wants to earn anything like what he was on before, well, then that cannot be a solution. Bernd Reichert, the chief executive of the European Super League, the A22 people.
I've forgotten about them, yeah.
He told German magazine Kicker that play will commence as regularly scheduled in September 2025.
Wow.
I bet you're excited, Jules.
Super excited. Who's in?
Well, he hasn't confirmed that yet.
So
I'm assuming Real Madrid and Barcelona, and they'll have no interest in the Champions League.
I mean, I would get excited once I will know the schedule, who's playing against who's going to reject the Champions League or the Europa League or the Conference League to play in this new tournament. Who's going to show this new tournament? Will I be able to watch it?
No,
I don't know.
I don't know. He went on. He said it's too expensive. They have an innovative streaming format supported.
I'm sure you
it's going to be free for everyone. What's really funny is he mentioned about there's too much imbalance in the Champions League, and he mentions the Bayern Dinamo Zagreb, the 9-2, and what was the other big result on Tuesday. But then and he's like, there's no uncertainty. But then you look at Lille against Real Madrid, and you look at the other Bayern.
Villa Bayern?
Villa Bayern?
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe there is.
Yeah, maybe there is.
Scotland and Portugal battled to a 0-0 draw, and Cristiano Ronaldo was not happy at the end, Jules.
Not happy at all. The referee didn't allow last corner to be taken by Portugal. There was a few other things before that. Cristiano growing frustrated by the fact that one, Portugal didn't play well. Two, didn't create much even for him. There was this free kick in the first half that Nuno Mendes and him were trying to play short, but there was a misunderstanding and it was an absolute mess. So not a good night, I think, for Cristiano, for Portugal, for Roberto Martinez, who did some few weird changes again, or it's only too late in my opinions. But I thought Scotland played well, and I know it's only a point. But I thought they were brave in the way they're trying to play, move the ball. McTominay had an incredible chance early on with a header that I should have scored. So for the frustration from the Portuguese, which you can understand, I thought there was a lot of positives from Scotland.
Can we just make a rule? This is a memo to IFAB, just to avoid all this controversy. You know how, like in the NFL, like a game cannot end on a defensive penalty?
Yeah.
Can we just make a rule that even if you're beyond the 4 minutes or however many minutes of time added on, the game can't end with a corner kick?
Yeah. I agree
just to avoid this chaos, this controversy.
Yeah, the ball should be
unhappy Cristiano. It's just not a good look.
No, I agree. Gab, the Premier League was supposed to have an emergency meeting following the verdict in the APT case brought by Manchester City against the Premier League, but that's not happening now.
Yeah, it was supposed to be happening today as we speak, but no. They had different committee meetings. Basically, this case is too complicated. They need to pay more money to lawyers and nerds to go and
to explain
and figure this out, to explain this out, to even have a plan about how they're going to approach the next steps. It's complicated. Both sides accusing each other of leaking, counter leaking. I think the strength. I don't think the sky's falling. I think the Premier League's going to be fine longer term. I just want to underscore the strength of the Premier League has been based since its inception on the fact that you had 20 people who, if they argued, it was behind closed doors, and that served them well. And ultimately, they always reached an agreement. Now they're bringing in lawyers. It's clearly the Premier League is more divided and more polarized. And cynics will say, well, it's not really divided because there's one team over here, Man City, maybe with little help from Aston Villa, and everybody else elsewhere. I don't know. But it's not a good look. Yeah. They're running a business. They are the shareholders in that business. The shareholders have to be united, and they have to find a way forward on this. And maybe there is no way forward because, look, in the end, and there's the 115 cases looming in the background, in the end, if you are illegally inflating, if it was proven that you are illegally inflating sponsorships with related parties or associated parties or whatever, then you are cheating. Right? It's as simple as that. If that is proven, and it has not been proven yet, right? there's no escaping this.
Yeah.
Arsenal beat Vålerenga 4-1 in the Women's Champions League, but Jules Jonas Eidevall has resigned.
Yeah, he did resign after the defeat against Chelsea. On the back already the defeat against Bayern Munich in the Champions League as well, a few days before that. I didn't see it coming. He was under pressure. Obviously, he needed result to turn things around quickly. Credit to him to have realized that maybe he didn't feel like he could turn things around. But often managers, I think, don't want to resign and, want to get sacked or stay in the job. So René Slegers, who was his assistant, took over, and she did really well with that first win in the Champions League against Vålerenga. They needed that massively at home as well. So now we see if they can continue that form and turn away this season. Chelsea co-sporting directors Paul Stanley and Lawrence Stewart gave a rare interview to The Telegraph. Gab, what did you learn?
Okay, I learned very little.
Okay,
it's a long-term project, that it's not about PSR, as evidenced by the fact that when the rules changed, they continued giving out these long things. They have a different approach. Chelsea need to be in the Champions League. Conor Gallagher is not about this whole pure profit motive because they turned down an offer from another academy product, which, by the way, is a stupid argument. I mean, Conor Gallagher, you either had to man up, give him a long contract, or you had to sell him. That's all you have to say. You don't have to. There's no point making comparison between him and somebody else in the academy who's got 4 years to go. Look, I've said before, I love the fact that sporting directors of football, recruitment guys are not held accountable, and I love the fact that this year we're seeing more and more of them speaking. Right, we saw the guy at Newcastle speak, Paul Mitchell. We've seen others. I think it's important that they speak. I wish, again, they might have been a little bit more detailed and forthcoming. I don't know on what basis they asked the questions. I hope these weren't pre-approved questions beforehand. But it's good. The more dialogue you have, one of the most toxic things is when you have a club like Chelsea or Manchester United or any other club where the only person doing the talking is the manager, and he's asked questions about stuff that are not his competency. There should be you're part of a team, right?
Absolutely.
You should all be speaking.
I agree.
We touched on this Monday, but Nigeria, as expected, ended up boycotting their African Cup of Nations qualifier against Libya after they were made to endure a logistical nightmare, 14 hours in the airport, flying to a different airport, blah, blah, blah. Jules, CAF say the game won't be replayed, and they'll make a decision on what to do in due course.
Good luck with that one, because from a Nigeria point of view, you can't be treated that way. It's not. This is not possible. It's not fair. It's not right. And good for them to have decided to boycott that game and just not accept the situation. For Libya, well, you had an opponent that I know didn't show up for the game, but I mean, who is it to blame for all this logistic nightmare? Really, somebody clearly in Libya said, you know what, direct them to another airport, make them stand in there for so long with no food, no water, no Wi-Fi, nothing. So CAF would give the match won to Libya, to Nigeria. Sure? Is it a draw? No, that's what I mean. What are they going to do? I've never seen a story like that ever before. So we don't even have a previews that could kind of guide this. I don't know what the answer is.
It's real. It's a tough one because you don't want to set a precedent like this because this time it's 14 hours and next time it's somebody, bumpy flight or the hotel was dirty or the bus got stuck in traffic and they knew it and blah, 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 or people banging pots and pans outside our hotel. Like, in terms of the group, Nigeria on 7 points, Benin on 6, Rwanda on 5, Libya on 1. Whichever way this goes, it could move the needle. The top two go through. We assume it's going to be Nigeria and one of the other two, Benin or Rwanda, but it's not a foregone conclusion. No. I can't imagine an AFCON without the Super Eagles, although I think I've already lived through one in my lifetime, so maybe I should be able to imagine it.
Ben Chilwell is our favourite at Chelsea, we know that. And Antonio Conte is still a big fan. Would Napoli offer him a way out, Gab?
Yeah, on loan, and with Chelsea paying 80% of his wages, sure, why not? He is a big fan. I think if Conte decides to go back three on a more permanent basis, McFly, what about this? Conte is a big fan. If Chelsea decide to cover most of his enormous wages, then on loan, maybe this could happen. Maybe good for him, some shop window. I think he is a good fit if you play if you play the back three that Conte wants. He already has two left backs there, Mateus Oliveira and Mario Rui. But fortunately, I think certainly Mario Rui and I think possibly Oliveira too. They're both Uncle George guys, and Uncle George has a lot of friends at Chelsea right now, and he can solve a lot of issues for Chelsea. So maybe there is a way to it. I just think it's grotesque that this guy's not playing, because you can say he's not good enough for Chelsea or whatever. He doesn't fit the plan, the project.
He's still a good player.
He's still a good player who can help many clubs. So
Absolutely.
I think in January, but it's right, in January, Chilwell will be playing football. Whether at Napoli, at Chelsea, or somewhere else. Most likely, I think somewhere else in the Premier League. Benjamin Mendy's lawsuit against Manchester City continues, Jules. Now, in 2021, the club suspended him, stopped paying him after he was accused of a series of rapes. He was later acquitted of all counts of rape. And this is not dropped charges. This is actually acquitted in a court of law. 5 counts the first time plus 2 subsequent counts. So now he's saying, guys, you stopped paying me. I want my money.
Yeah, it was
11 million pounds.
11 million pounds, that's right. Him and his agent, Mesa India, is saying that Omar Barada, who was then the City CEO before moving to United, I kind of said to them, listen, if he is cleared and found innocent, then we will give the money back that we haven't paid him for doing all this process, the investigation, the court trials, etc., etc. Now Omar Barada said, no, I never said that. Certainly there's nothing on paper. And that's at the heart of everything. The club said that he broke lockdown rules, for example. He said, I was not the only one. There was a lot of players, including the club captain, and he named them. So he put everybody in the source.
Okay, when he said club captain, does he mean the club captain at the time, or does he mean the current club captain?
Well, I think he meant the one at the time.
And the one at the time was Fernandinho.
So, I mean...
The current club captain is Kyle Walker.
Okay, maybe it's Kyle Walker then. But I thought he was maybe the one at the time. But then he says that basically a lot of players were also breaking the rules. He also explained that because he had no wages paid by City anymore, he had no money to pay for his lawyers. So Sterling, Mahrez, and Bernardo Silva helped him out.
Can you say something? Who is his financial advisor that I
don't know.
You've been a professional footballer for 10 years.
Yeah.
You've played for Manchester City. You've played for big clubs.
Massive wages.
On massive wages. And then I know it's tough. You don't get a salary for 2 years. But all of a sudden you can't pay your lawyers and you have to borrow money.
I know.
Who's his financial advisor?
I know. That's a good question. That is a good question.
But I don't know how you feel about this. My take on this is, and people have drawn comparisons to Mason Greenwood, who continued being paid. But Mason Greenwood never went to trial.
Yeah.
Obviously, the charges were dropped there. For me, the question is, at what point have you breached your contract with Manchester City?
Mm-hmm.
If you breach your contract, because they said he wasn't in condition to play, partly because you have this case where you are charged with rape, and you breach your contract and you're charged with rape because you put yourself in a situation by breaking lockdown rules and club rules where you can then be charged with rape. I'm assuming this is the Man City line of defense.
Yeah, it would be. Well, it is, yeah.
It seems extraordinary to me that City would let this go to court at this stage rather than reaching some sort of settlement for him.
Yeah, I agree. Roma host Inter this weekend in Serie A, and it sounds like their owner, the Friedkin family, are going to face a rough ride, Gab. Is this just about the sacking of Mourinho and then De Rossi, or there's more?
No, it's a lot more. I think they're really angry with him. It goes beyond Mourinho and De Rossi. It's the constant turnover of officials at the club. It's the way that, they never appear in the city. Now, they issued a communique where they said, look, you've spent a ton of money on this club, and we're grateful for that. But running a football club isn't just about chucking money at it. It's also about making the right decisions.
Yeah.
It's also about being respectful of the city and the fan base and engaging in the right way. They don't feel this has happened. I think certainly the De Rossi sacking doesn't help. And before that, the Mourinho sacking that they were also angry about.
Yeah.
So against Roma this weekend, the Curva, where the ultras sit, it's gonna stay empty, and they're only gonna walk in 15 minutes into the game, and then they're gonna do a silent protest during the match. We'll see how that works out. But, it's a warning shot and a reminder as well for Everton fans. I think, I don't know that they're bad owners, but they certainly run their club differently from most owners. And let's face it, most American owners as well. Opta have published a ranking of the world's top 10 domestic leagues. Jules, it's based on their power rankings, which I'm guessing is a formula that the nerds at Opta put together. So I don't think there's any bias or judgment in this.
No.
I need to run it past you to see if it passes the Jules test.
Okay.
Now, they don't just rank them, they also give them a number, right?
Okay.
So quickly in first place, we have the Premier League, 87.9. Joint second, Serie A and the Bundesliga. Joint fourth, Ligue 1 and La Liga.
It's okay.
Both on 85.1. I found that a little bit surprising. Further down, the Belgium Pro League is in 8th place, ahead of MLS, the Championship in 10th place. The Saudi Pro League, not in the top 20.
I wonder how some would feel about that. So we don't know the criteria.
What do you think George Jesus has to say about
Cristiano? We don't know the criteria, the full power ratings with the algorithm, obviously, but we don't know exactly what's the criteria. Then there's your personal preference. When you watch those leagues, there's leagues that you prefer than others. You prefer the style of football. There's clubs that you prefer in some leagues that would influence you. I don't think La Liga and Ligue 1 are on the same level, obviously. I don't even think that Serie A and the Bundesliga are on the same level. I think Serie A is a better league than the Bundesliga. For me, certainly, in all the games that I watch every weekend, like you, Gabi, for me, I would have La Liga higher as well. But then again, if you look at all 20 clubs or 18 clubs, depending on which league, and outside a bit of Real Madrid, Barca, and I guess maybe Atletico Madrid to a certain point, Club de Bilbao, overall, the Serie A might be better than La Liga, for example, this season.
I think one of the metrics that, they use many different metrics, but I think one key metric that they use is essentially the top to bottom strength of the league.
Yeah.
So in other words, how often do we see teams near the bottom get points against teams on the top?
Which is a very good indicator of the level of your
Some
league.
people say that. So I think that's something that penalizes the Premier League, because for all this talk about competitiveness, blah, 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 in reality, the big six dominate and have always dominated. I think in the last 25 years, the only three teams outside the top six to finish top four, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jules, are Newcastle did it once, Everton did it once, and I think Leicester did it once. Well, I know. And Villa now. Yeah. That's not a lot of turnover compared to the other.
No.
Right? In France, you've got Brest, finishing top
Absolutely,
four.
yeah.
And they're not even a football club. They're a body part. So I think that is one of the things that penalizes the Premier League and why the gap is close there. And it certainly penalizes La Liga, where it seems that no matter how bad Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, and Real Madrid are every year, they're always in the top four.
Yeah.
It's just a perception.
Yeah,
right? But these guys back it up with numbers.
No, but
hey,
it's that.
You got a problem with this? Bring it up with Opta, right?
Yeah.
They're on all your social media.
If you're Dutch as well, because the Eredivisie is nowhere near that top 10
I think
either.
if I remember correctly, the Eredivisie are 13th.
If you're Dutch and you're not happy, if you're one of the Dutch guys. Saudi Arabia were held to a 0-0 draw at home by Bahrain. Gab 2 points in 3 games now for your boy Roberto Mancini.
He is under a lot of pressure. I believe he is the highest paid national team coach in the world by some distance. And Saudi Arabia, of course, a powerhouse, and they were at the last World Cup. They'll be at the next one. So the Asian qualifying, it seems to go on forever, and there's a million rounds. This is round 3. They're in a group of 6 teams. The top 2 qualify automatically. The next ones go into round 4, where I think 2 of 6 teams qualify, and then there's another round after that. Whatever. Japan has 10 points. Australia, Saudi, Bahrain are all on 5. Indonesia on 3. China on 3. I'm guessing Indonesia and China probably not particularly good. So look, there's plenty of time for them to turn it around, but they may have to go to round 4, which is probably not what they want to do.
Definitely
unless
not.
they can get points off of Australia. I understand why they're angry, and they should be angry. You should be held to account if you make a lot of money.
But he also blamed it on the Saudi Super League now, saying that before, I don't know, he said 80% of my Saudi players were playing in the top flight. Now, with all the foreign players who've come, in the last 18 months for this Saudi Pro League, then that's not the case anymore, which he probably has a point, to be fair.
He would play, he's explaining, he's not blaming, but yeah, he's right. And look, this is another age-old argument, like the influence, the more foreign players, I mean, look, the Premier League, I believe, has the among the big 5 leagues, I think is the second highest percentage of foreign players, and they still produce a ton of players.
Yeah.
The argument being is that it makes the players who do play that much better.
Yeah.
My concern in the Saudi Pro League is these guys who they brought in, if they mostly all play in the same positions, does that then hurt the Saudi players?
Yeah.
Some people were telling me, oh, don't worry, there's so many great young Saudi players that, if their places get taken over by, the Cristiano Ronaldos of this world, then they'll just move to Europe. Well, no, that hasn't quite happened.
Yeah.
Turkey, gobble, gobble, come from behind to beat Iceland away 4-2. But Jules, this was notable because of a weird Hakan Çalhanoğlu penalty that was scored but then disallowed.
It was disallowed.
I know we don't have the pictures. Go check it out. It was unusual. Describe it.
It's very simple. It happens quite regularly, I think. It's a double touch. So his standing foot, Çalhanoğlu's left foot, which is his standing foot, when he's about to hit the ball with his right foot for the penalty, slips, so touches the ball first, and then his right foot on his follow-up movement, obviously, also touches the ball. So even if the ball goes in, he's touched it twice, which you're not allowed. Somebody has to touch it in between your two touches. So it could be a bit on
his backside.
Yeah, as well. It could be a bit cruel in a way because the ball still goes in, and I'm not sure how much that bothers the goalkeeper, the double touch. But that's the rule. So yeah, no penalty.
And he hadn't missed a penalty, I think, in a long time.
Yeah, he's the king of.
The king. Thanks again to Opta, who've been filling up this international break with stats. Do you know who the best penalty taker since 2021 in Europe, both international and domestic is? I'll give you a hint. He plays in Serie A, but does not play for a big team.
So
and he's been injured for a long time. He's only missed one penalty in the last 4 years.
Really?
Yes.
He's taken a lot.
It's like he's taken I think he's 20 of 21.
Okay, go on.
It's Domenico Berardi.
Wow. Okay.
It's an interesting list.
Yeah. I mean, Super Mario was obviously quite good at it
for a long time. Yeah.
Gab, beIN Sports has angered many clubs in Ligue 1, unfortunately, because they still haven't made payments for the rights of the league that they acquired in the summer. We've mentioned that before, but now we've also discovered something about Euro 2024, and our friend John Texter and Lyon consider that the partnership is void.
That's right, Texter time! Oh, you wanted it. We're giving it to you. Look, I have no idea if he had anything to do with this or if it's his chief executive, but he sounded the alarm. He's saying, look, beIN Sport haven't held up their end of the bargain. They paid for one game a week every weekday, and they haven't. They've agreed to it, but they haven't paid it. So now the contract is void. Which is great news because there's so many people queuing up to buy Ligue 1 rights. They can sell it to somebody else to give them more money. There is a bit of a concern here. So reportedly, they've also missed a payment to UEFA for Euro 2024 where they owe the rights. And that's a bit harder to explain within this context. One theory is put out there for them not paying their Ligue 1 deal is that apparently 80% of the deal is payment, but 20% is...
That's right.
The clubs have to promote tourism in Qatar, and every club is supposed to go and send, I guess, a business plan of how they're going to promote tourism in Qatar. Which, okay, can I say something? I think this is really stupid. If I'm Brest, second Brest reference of the show, I'm assuming they probably have you know how Manchester United has more than 1,000 employees? I'm guessing at Brest, other than the footballers and the sporting staff, it's probably 3 people. Who know nothing about tourism. Because not many people go on holiday to Brest, right? With all due respect.
Brittany is a very popular holiday destination.
Yeah, for English people.
For everyone.
People going to Mont Saint-Michel and whatever. Come on, man. I'm a South of France type of guy. Or the Alps, or the French Alps. You want these guys to make a business plan for you about how they're going to promote Qatar tourism? It seems like a stupid pretense. Yeah. Just agree how many banners you're going to have in your stadium, how many signage, whatever. This is embarrassing. I don't know what's going on here. But I do know that they need to pay, and I do know that this all stems, by the way, from Vincent Labrune, he's the head of the French league.
CEO.
Promising that, we're going to get €1 billion in TV rights. Yeah. Instead, I think he's had to settle for roughly half that.
Yeah. exactly.
Yeah, this is a
600
trend.
million.
People, like, I know we work for a television company. People who blame the television companies, oh, you have so much power, you have all the money. Guys, the business model is changing. Clubs need to be realistic about how much money that they can actually get from us. And I think we said it about beIN Sport, Qatar in general. Nobody enjoys throwing money into a furnace. And this applies to them. It applies to Abu Dhabi. It applies to the Saudis. At some point, you got to get a return. And at some point, the market corrects itself.